So today's new lesson is based off of an old lesson. So if we go to the top left corner, we did a subtract problem like this before. Does anybody remember from a couple weeks ago how we went about subtracting something like this?
Like take the 1 from the 5,
Yep.
put it into the fraction.
Yes.
3.
Yes. What's that called? What's that process called when we subtract and we have to start by crossing this out and doing replacements?
Borrow.
We had to do some subtracting with borrowing. So you can't have an empty space subtract 2/3. We need somebody to fill in this space. So the way we did that was we borrowed 1 from the 5 to make that a 4, and then we pulled in 3/3. 3/3, as we talked about a couple minutes ago before we recorded, a fraction like 3/3 is the same as 1. So this is fair. We took 1 away from this, and we just moved that 1 over there. We just moved where the 1 was located, but there's still 5 there. There was 5 originally, 4 plus 1, there's still 5 there. We just set it up in such a way that we're better off to subtract. Why did he pick 3/3 and not 2/2 or 7/8, 7/7 or 10/10 or something else like that?
The bottom number is 3.
It is, and if we're subtracting fractions, we have to have a thing called
Common denominator.
common denominator. So we picked 3/3 to have a nice common denominator. We could subtract that and get 1/3, subtract that and get 3, and we're good. And some of the homework tonight will be based just on that old skill that we did a couple weeks ago. I think that's how the homework starts, with maybe a handful of those. Question about that? And then here's a change. If we go to do this one, do we still have to borrow to try to do this problem? Yes, why?
The bottom 2/3 is bigger than 1/3.
2/3 is bigger than 1/3. So a minute ago, just like the empty space couldn't subtract a fraction, 1/3 is too little to subtract 2/3. So we do have to borrow from the 5 again. We do have to make a 4 again. We have to do a fill in here again, but it can't be 3/3 that we fill in because there's already somebody in our way. Anybody have a thought on what the fraction is going to get created?
4/3.
It'd be 4/3. How'd you do that?
Just add 3.
Just add it on. So the trick that we can do here when we borrow for the fraction part is add the bottom onto the top. So we wanted to borrow 1 from this. We wanted to move that 1 over here as 3/3. But when 3/3 bumps into 1/3, it's going to make that 4/3. But if you want a shortcut, just add the bottom to the top. That's going to work every time. And then we could do the subtraction. This would be 2/3. This part will make 3. Question about that, the back half of the homework will do those. So if we go to do this one, what do we have to borrow?
1 from,
Do we have to?
yeah.
Yeah, why?
Because the top is smaller than the bottom.
Yeah, 2 is smaller than 3. So we've got to borrow from 6 to make
5.
5. And then the fraction, we're going to just change the top. 9. How'd you get 9?
Added 7 to 2.
Add the bottom onto the top. Add the bottom onto the top, that's 9. So fraction subtraction gets us 6/7. The numbers make 2. One more of those. Need to borrow? Don't need to borrow. Need to borrow. Why need to borrow?
The 7 smaller than
7 smaller than the 8. So borrow from 4 makes 3.
9 nines.
9/9 gets in there, but it doesn't become a 9.
12 or 11.
Higher. 14? 16 is correct.
Oh, wait,
Add the 9/9 onto the 7/9. If you add 9 onto 7, that's 16. So subtraction,
8 nines.
8/9. This part,
1.
1. Are there subtract problems with mixed numbers that you don't have to borrow? Yes. When don't you?
Is when the top is bigger than
If the top's already bigger. So I don't know if they'll do that in the homework. If I were making a homework, I'd sneak one in where I might have had 5 7/10 minus 3 2/10. And then if you're in the habit of like borrow, it would teach you to just, you have to pay attention. This one you don't have to borrow because the top's bigger. This would just make
But 5/10.
5/10. We can do 7 minus 2 and get 5/10. In this part, we could get 2. Why is that not best answer?
Because it could turn into a half.
We could make 5/10 by reducing into a half. Over the course of the year, 7th graders will often ask me, do we have to reduce on this? And for the first time, I'll say this answer, always, okay? Always want to reduce. If it can reduce, you always want to reduce, always, always, always. So if you bump into anything that's a fraction answer that reduces tonight, yes, reduce it. Always look to reduce anything that's a fraction that you can. Question about this? Okay, there's a set in the back of these, so where we're headed is the set U. Set U, the first 10 are like that first one that I did, that it didn't even have a fraction, so all you had to do is fill in a fraction when you borrow like 8/8, 10/10, 12/12, one of those things. When you get to 11, there starts to be a fraction on both locations when you borrow at the bottom to the top. And as I said, I'm not positive you'll borrow on every problem, so just pay attention. If they sneak in some where the top fraction is bigger than the bottom fraction, just roll with it. Maybe 20, 25 minutes, you could probably get that set U done. So set U, get cracking on that.